It's been incredibly frustrating for me to watch any kind of streaming TV show lately because many of the shows lack one very important thing. And if you've had trouble watching streaming shows of late but didn't know why, I'm about to tell you what they're lacking and why they aren't working so you can avoid it in your writing. If you've been around this channel for any length of time, this will look familiar to you. A story is about someone who wants something badly and is having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. That's what a story is at its most basic level. So write it down, commit it to memory, apply it to every story you write. A main character, a measurable goal the main character wants really badly, difficulty along the way, also known as conflict, and they get it or they don't. And it doesn't matter if it's a movie, a TV show, a song, commercial, novel, graphic novel, short story, doesn't matter. If it doesn't have these components, it's not a story. What's more, and this is the part that a lot of people miss, the story is what takes place in the second act. It's not all the stuff that happens from beginning of the movie to the very end. There is an act 1 and an act 3, but the story itself happens in act 2. And as a result of the answer of did they get it or not, that's what we find out at the end of act 2 and what spins the events into act 3. It's not what we find out at the very end of the movie. So let's look at films for a moment. Films are primarily about one person trying to do something in the second act. Maybe they're trying to deliver droids. Maybe they're trying to escape a planet. Maybe they're trying to collect all of the Infinity Stones. It doesn't matter what they are wanting, but they clearly want something and they want it badly. And they spend the entire second act trying to get it. Luke is trying to get the droids to the rebels, and at the end of the second act, he does. But now the Empire knows where the rebels are, and Act 3 is about will the rebels destroy the Death Star, or will they be destroyed by the Death Star? Mark Watney is trying to escape Mars, which he does at the end of the second act. But now he's in space, and he still has to find a way to get onto his ship. So everything that happens to Mark after he leaves Mars is Act 3. Thanos wants all of the Infinity Stones, and he manages to get them at the end of the second act. But there's still some resistance until he snaps his fingers, and then he makes his escape. Everything that happens after the snap is Act 3. And in Infinity War, Act 3 is very, very short. So of course, for each of our main characters, they have trouble along the way getting what they want. There are conflicts, setbacks, betrayals, all of the things that make for great stories. But because there is someone who wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't, all within the second act, we actually have a story. So for review, in case you haven't got it, you need a main character, a goal, some conflict, and an answer, all within the second act. And that's how films are supposed to work. It's really how stories are supposed to work. But in films, there's some setup in the first act, the story proper in the second act, and some resolution in the third act. TV shows work a little differently, but not as much as you'd think. And if you can remember that a story is what primarily takes place during the second act, understanding how TV shows are structured will make more sense to you. In TV, each episode is a specific story. A character is trying to do something, they have trouble, and they do it or not, all within one episode. And just like stories belong to one person, episodes can also belong to one person. So even if you have a large cast, each episode will be one character's episode. And that character wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't by the end of the episode. In other words, each episode of TV is a second act. There is a scene or two setting up the episode, the act 1, the bulk of the episode is act 2, and then there's usually a scene or 3 or 4 maybe that serves as the third act, which usually sets up the next episode or serves the larger story of the series as a whole. So when you look at a whole series for TV, it's really just a bunch of second acts over and over and over and over and over, each one with a character pursuing some new want or goal within each episode. This is most evident in cop shows. Each episode has a crime of the week, and the heroes of the show want to solve that crime during that episode. That's what they want badly. That's what they're having trouble doing. But at the end of the episode, we find out if they solve the case or not. At least that's what's supposed to happen in TV. Enter streaming TV shows. These shows are produced with the expectation that viewers will binge watch the show, that they will watch from episode 1 to episode last in a fairly quick order. But this is where the wheels come off the bus. Because of some imagined viewer experience, streaming TV shows of late have been structured like one big movie. And on the surface, this is fine, especially if you're going to watch all of those episodes in a row, or if they're going to release all of those episodes all at once so viewers can binge watch the whole season. So you have one season of a show and it's essentially one big movie. So if there are 8-hour-long episodes, it's like an 8-hour movie. And if you watch all 8 episodes, you'll get to figure out what the main character wants, the difficulty they have along the way, and you'll find out if they get it or not. Again, in theory. But in practice, this means that the first 2 episodes are really all set up. They are the act 1 of the 8-hour movie. And we don't really find out what the main character is trying to do until episode 3 or 4, if we find out then. And that's if we can even figure out who the main character is by episode 3 or 4. And then episodes 5 and 6 are boring because we know what the character is after, but they're not always pursuing it fully at this point. And there's a bunch of side stories from ancillary characters that we don't really care anything about. And then the last couple of episodes in the season are actually good. And they're good only if we've suffered through the first 6 hours of the movie. And here's the problem. This is why you don't like some streaming TV shows, even if you think that you're going to like them. Because each episode of a show should be a complete story. There should be a character pursuing something badly, and they have difficulty, and they get it, or they don't. Now, what they are pursuing might clearly be a step closer to what they ultimately want, the story of the series, but each episode has to have a clear want, and that should happen in every story. And the very medium of TV episodes they are meant to be complete stories. This is why streaming shows like The Mandalorian are good, because Mando has a clear goal for each episode. And this is why shows like Hawkeye or Lord of the Rings of Power are met with lukewarm enthusiasm. Hawkeye and Lord of the Rings are fun, but I don't know what anyone is doing or why they're doing it until episode 3 or 4. I don't know what the characters are trying to accomplish, and if I do know, I don't know how they think they're going to accomplish it. And what has happened is many of the streaming shows have adopted a model of make a season like one big movie and make sure you have a cliffhanger of some kind at the end of the episode to hopefully intrigue the viewer to make them want to watch the next episode. And if we cared about the characters, this would work. But when we don't know what the characters are pursuing, because we won't find that out for 3 or 4 episodes, or how they are trying to accomplish the goal they have, we as the audience, we have nothing to root for. We have nothing to care about, because one of the key things that reveals character is knowing what that character thinks is important. If I know what someone thinks is important, that helps me know something about them. And what they are pursuing and the way they go about pursuing it helps us know what they feel is important. But if there is no goal, or at least if we, the audience, if we don't know what the goal is, or we won't know what the goal is until episode 3 or 4, we don't know what's important in episode 1. And as a result, we might find the characters interesting, but we don't care about them. And often the pilot episode introduces multiple characters, and we're like, so whose story is it? I mean, we may not even know who the main character is. And if we don't know what any of them are pursuing or what any of them want, and we basically just get all of these little vignettes with characters going about their lives, we don't know what to root for or why we should even care about them in the first place. And this is why you'll watch 1 or 2 episodes of a new series and then bail. And this is also why many streaming shows' first seasons are good, because they make sure each episode is a complete story. But then subsequent seasons are not as good because the show starts being written like it's a movie when it is in fact a TV show. And newsflash, TV shows are not movies. They are TV shows. And just because you take an 8-hour movie and chop it into 8 pieces doesn't mean you now have a streaming TV show. You don't. You now have an 8-piece movie. A lot of people hail Breaking Bad as a great TV show. And you want to know why? Well, it's because there is both a big overarching story for the entire series, but each episode stands on its own. Each episode is a complete second act. A character wants something badly, they have trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. Walter is always trying to accomplish something specific in each episode, and he gets it or he doesn't. And each episode then has a complete story. And at the end of the episode, the Act 3, there is a scene or two that sends the big overarching story off in a new direction, giving us something to look forward to in the next episode. But not all episodes belong to Walter. Some episodes belong to Jesse, and Jesse's trying to do something. A few other characters have episodes as well, and those episodes are their story. But it's clearly Walter White's show. He is the main character, and we clearly know that from the pilot. So if you're wanting to write a streaming show, each episode has to be a complete story. And the main character at the end of that episode is sent off on a new direction for the next episode based on what happened in the current one. You want to know why Game of Thrones was beloved at first and not toward the end? The first season's episodes were all complete stories, but as the show went on and began to spiral out of control, it became more of a movie that was chopped up into pieces instead of having individual episodes. In other words, instead of having each episode be a complete second act, the episodes were so chopped up from a movie, and you feel like you're just watching a bunch of disjointed second acts, and viewers began to lose interest. So when it comes to your writing, look at a script you've written, or even one that you're working on now. Can you fill in all of the blanks of the definition of a story? Someone who wants something badly and they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. If you can't fill in all of the blanks by the end of the second act, you don't have a complete story, and if you're writing a TV streaming show, you're in trouble. A quick side note, movies are actually structured in a way that allows them to have episodic elements within the film. At least the good ones do this. If we look at The Martian, Mark Watney is trying to get off Mars. That's what he wants. And we find out at the end of the second act if he gets it. But to get off of Mars, he has to figure out how to survive there. And there's one problem he must solve in his quest to leave Mars: food. And so one episode of the film is Mark trying to grow potatoes. He has difficulty, but after time, potatoes start growing, and all of that is one episode of the film. And those episodes in films are actually called sequences. And if you want to learn more about sequences, watch this. Please don't forget about all the fun buttons below, and there are some links there if you'd like my help in your screenwriting endeavors. And last, when you tell a story that matters. See you later.